Welcome to Duderonomy, the podcast where we examine existential turtle crises. I'm Bryan.
And Dan.
And like every good millennial, we have gone ahead and hunkered down and decided to wax poetic about our favorite nostalgic pieces of intellectual property from the 80s. Thanks, Reagan. Today, we're going to look at episode 2 of the 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, Fred Wolf cartoon, Enter the Shredder. And Dan, this is where it really starts to heat up, doesn't it?
Definitely. It's funny how they set up things in the first episode with like, you had no way of knowing where they were going to go and then immediately pay it off in the next episode.
Very true. Like, I don't know about you. I'm trying to figure out like when did Turtles really get its teeth into you? Like, did you fall in love right at the first episode of the cartoon? Did it take until the movie? What was it for you?
Oh man. I mean, it was so long ago. It's kind of hard to remember. Because I definitely watched it. I watched the cartoon prior to seeing the movie. Because my sister had read the comics, so she got me into it. And I think it was sort of one of those things where like she was reading the comics and then saw that there's this animated series, and I was just getting old enough to really appreciate it. So she kind of introduced me to it that way. And so I'm pretty sure it was the cartoon, and I just got swept up in Turtle Mania. You know, it was different. It was cool. It was all this different stuff going on. And I, as like a little bit of a personal anecdote, I loved the Turtles because I had this friend who, whenever we played like superheroes and stuff, I was always the sidekick. But with Turtles, his favorite color was orange. So he always wanted to be Mikey, and my favorite color was blue. So I got to be Leo, who was the leader. So like anytime we played Ninja Turtles, I was finally the person who got to like boss everybody around.
I've known you for almost 20 years and I have never heard this story.
Yeah. It's also where my like deep love of Dick Grayson Robin comes from, because I was always Robin when I was a kid.
So Nightwing.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. What I'm trying to figure out is that moment in time when the cartoon was like gospel to you. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I signed up hook, line, and sinker on the first episode.
It would like, again, I don't remember the exact specific, but it's definitely season 1. Because even like rewatching these 2 episodes for the first time in a very long time, I feel like I know exactly what is happening. Like somewhere in the deep recesses of my mind, I've recorded all of this down, and now it's just coming back as a pleasant memory instead of something that like, oh, I don't remember this at all.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, yeah, these kind of things when you're that age, it was the perfect. Sorry, I'm distracted because my cat won't leave me alone. It was the perfect place and time. We were the perfect demographic. Like that is capitalism at its best. Honestly, is taking the IP that was Turtles in the comics and hooking us in as kids with this show.
Because it's kind of like the perfect encapsulation of everything TV was trying to do at the time.
Yeah.
You know, like there was He-Man before that. And
sell toys.
Yep. Like Transformers was kind of around the same time. At least the movie was. Like that was 1986, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like all of these companies had this opportunity to really like distill it down, and all they were waiting for was like the perfect IP to really figure out like, okay, how do we make a cartoon that is fun and engaging but has a ton of different characters that we can make toys out of. And you know, the Turtles with the mutagen and being able to create all these different characters from it really was just a money printing machine for that.
Very true. All right. So the one thing I did notice right off the bat in this one is, call me crazy, it's an animation shift again, right?
Well, the first thing I noticed was, again, the title card having a mistake.
Oh, really? I didn't even catch that.
Well, at least on my copy, it's Leonardo, but wearing an orange mask.
Oh, yeah. That's common, though. That happens like 100 times in the series. They just never fixed it.
It's just so funny because, like, of course, in the comics, they were all wearing the same masks, and the colors were done for the cartoon for kids to identify them with. And to see early on them like messing up their own code.
And not even in like the subtle ways where it's animation in motion and you can kind of forgive it because it's a little bit of chaos.
Yeah.
It's like it's a still image. So when I was younger, in my headcanon, that was just Michelangelo making fun of Leonardo.
I love that.
Because I mean, like, we're not stupid. We're kids, but we're not totally stupid. So I saw that, I'm like, well, that's wrong.
Right. Like it feels early enough where, like, I mean, likely what happened is that there was a different studio or a different team doing the title cards than the animation.
Yeah.
So, and they just did, miscommunication or something like that. But that works so perfectly that there is like an in-canon reason for that.
I tried to justify something for myself.
Oh, I love it. I didn't notice the animation being too different, but
the thing that caught me is that they have the different beaks. Because like in the first episode and I think the third episode, they have like a line definition between their eyes, down their nose to show like that turtle beak, right?
Yeah.
And this one, they're softer, rounder. So it just looks like it's a different artist.
Okay,
and
yeah,
you're
right. The line now is on the top of the nose, going horizontal instead of the vertical one from the first episode.
Right. It's the difference between like the TMNT 3 movie Pointy Beaks and the TMNT 2 movie Donatello wide pancake mouth.
Yes.
So again, in my headcanon as a child, that all works.
Well, it's cool because like the first time you notice it too is when they don't have their masks on at the beginning of the episode.
True. Yeah, and that's actually the perfect segue because the first note I have written in front of me is maskless turtles. Ooh.
My first note is I love that they have bedside pegs for their masks.
Yes.
Yeah. They took the time to add that to the bed frame.
I mean, it's world building. It's world building. They don't have pants. They don't have shoes. Get the mask. I find it a little uncomfortable that they sleep in their pads, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, it's just like it does make it look like that's more just random fabric that they're wearing than actual any useful elbow and knee pads. But
and then as soon as the turtles wake up in episode 2, April is still there, and they jump into sparring and then breakfast. And I just wanted to say this was one of our we had the pizza parlor in the first episode, Ninja Pizza. But this one, they do homemades. So
who wants cornflakes? I'm having Raisin Bran.
Choco Puffs for me.
I'm thinking like these are DiGiorno's from the freezer, and then they add cereal. And I know I can't validate this with any semblance of evidence, but I know for a fact in the back of my psyche, I made a cereal pizza as a kid. To try to be, because I knew that was easy. Like I didn't know how to get sardines and the weird stuff they used to make pizzas, and I didn't have balls to ask my parents for it. So I definitely took like a frozen personal pan pizza out of the fridge when I was a kid and poured probably Cocoa Puffs on it. And the memory has ceased to exist, so that probably tells you everything you need to know.
I mean, it was probably fine. A little crunchy, but fine.
Yeah. I mean, it was edible. Like I don't remember getting sick.
I just love that their idea of breakfast is having breakfast food and then adding it to pizza.
I mean, I can't even express how important this franchise was to us, because like pizza for breakfast is like a tent pole of my existence as a human. Like I will preach that. Like I've said this time and time again, I have bought pizza the night before and not eaten it with the anticipation of having it for breakfast.
Oh, wow. See, I'll eat, I'll have leftovers the next day, but I don't save it.
I mean, I've only most of the time it's at least an ulterior motive to get pizza. It's like, I want it for breakfast the next day. But there has been at least 2 occasions where I've straight up just ordered a pizza I didn't want that night. And yeah, breakfast pizza. The hot take: breakfast pizza better than breakfast burritos.
Ooh, I mean, I would probably agree with that anyway, because it with breakfast pizza is just pizza. It's just whatever you ordered. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna have a burrito, but it's gonna have eggs in it instead. It's like, no, I'm just gonna eat pizza.
I'm also vouching in favor of putting real breakfast things on a pizza. So like a croissant crust with cheese and eggs and sausage.
Oh, okay.
Like a hollandaise sauce. That's a really good breakfast pizza right there. but I'm also just straight up like, give me tomato cheese, baby.
Yeah, I've had many conversations with my wife where like, oh man, you had pizza. Are you okay having pizza the next day? And I'm like, yes. Like,
who the hell asks that? Who the
like,
hell?
I don't get tired of pizza.
No, what the hell? All right, back at the task at hand. My next note is something that I really appreciated. Like, it seems like an obvious thing, but in a kid's show, they really didn't need the care. But the clue that had them find where the Technodrome previously was the continuity of the flood. And I actually thought that was pretty solid. Like, yeah. I know as 30-something-year-old adults, we look back at that and go, duh. But as a kid, I was like, oh, the plot thickens, you know?
Well, it is like a brief moment of realization that even a show like this, like, is it treating its audience like, it's not treating them stupid, you know? Like the best kid shows are the ones that like acknowledge them as just, well, like, you're people and you're watching the show are not going to dumb it down because you're quote unquote kids. And like, yeah, it probably gets that way, but it is like kind of neat that they started off by being like, yeah, they can follow a through line between episode 1 and 2.
Yeah. I just thought that was solid because like you don't even see that as much nowadays. Like they don't even have that kind of continuity in the latest Ninja Turtle iteration. I mean, there's some of it later on in Rise of the TMNT, but for the most part, they're standalone episodes, right? And there's nothing wrong with that either. I enjoy those very much. It's like a sitcom. You know, you don't have to worry about overarching, but there were consequences to their actions. And I thought that was pretty solid for a 1980s throwaway, you know, what could have been, they didn't need to care kid show.
Right. Yeah. For a show that's just selling toys, it's like, oh, there's an actual story between episodes.
Right. That being said, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to point out that like the sewers are immense in this. Like, yeah, I love how just like massive. Like I haven't spent too much time in the sewers of New York City, but I don't think they're this huge.
It definitely did give me fault. Like it's up there with the dangers of quicksand. People offering you drugs casually on the street, and then like alligators in the toilet, and then New York sewers are these weird fantasy things from our childhood in the 80s. Yeah. That just made you think like these are going to be way bigger concerns when you get to be an adult than they really are.
Or you're just like the fact that a thing the size of the Technodrome could travel underneath the top side of Manhattan and nobody knows about it.
Oh yeah, no, like for sure. Like I wish we had the resources to call in like a physicist as a guest on the show, because like New York, Manhattan would fucking collapse. Yeah. It would implode on itself.
Yeah, I mean, it would just sink in. Most of Manhattan is like a man-made island. It's
right.
It's built on like sand.
There's absolutely no justification for them cruising around under the streets. Like when they finally get to the ocean and stuff later on, I'm like, okay, well, that works. You know, it gives them a little bit of a thing. And, you know, sharks are cool. But like driving under the streets, even when I was little, I was like, oh, that seems dangerous.
Yeah. And in this episode, they include like a not like a description, but like an analog to the size of the Technodrome. Because Mikey says like something the size of Shea Stadium traveling underneath the streets.
Which like it's legitimately daunting to think about, right? Put wheels on a baseball stadium and nothing land vehicle wise obviously has made its way. This is a science fiction show, but good Lord, like it existing above ground would have been daunting. The concept of
my God,
just cruising around underneath the streets with nothing but, you know, support beams and loose soil to, you know, keep a roof over its head. What the hell, Fred?
And then just add on the idea that the sewers in Manhattan are already so huge that they can actually accommodate this without any like there's no like plumbing problems for the city. It's just fine.
All Shredder had to do was lapse to win. All he had to do was drive, and Manhattan would have been his. Okay, and that being said, OG Krang was scary as hell.
Oh yeah, it's just a brain,
right? Because he become the bumbling Shredder Krang dynamic later on in the show is fun, but I was horrified as a kid. There are two distinct things. I don't remember. I might have mentioned this on the first episode, but like when Shredder shows up in the first movie, when like not when he's at the TVs, when he makes his big entrance with the cape, right?
Oh yeah.
He walks into the middle of Purple Dragons, and the foot soldiers come down and they peel his cape back, and then he like looks over his shoulder. I was so mortified by that as a kid. I would hide behind the chair that I was sitting in watching the movie.
I don't care what anybody says, and obviously we'll go into more detail when we eventually do get to the movie, but like that, I think to this day is the best villain entrance in a superhero movie. I don't care.
There's a lot of credit that TMNT still gets in my eyes as a comic book movie, as an adaptation movie, as an action movie, as a comedy family movie, as a lot of things. And I'm blinded by nostalgia, so you're going to have to deal with it. You listen to this podcast, fuck off. But yeah, Krang with his like giant tentacles that like were the width of the room.
Yep.
He was terrifying, right?
And just the idea, I mean, they sell him really properly in the beginning too, because like even Shredder is like, I won't be able to stop you if I get you your body. So I'm pretty like, I don't know how much I actually want to help you. It's like, oh wow, like our big bad is scared of something. That's crazy.
I really like what's his name? Oh shoot, hold on, I got IMDb in front of me. I need the cast list. Pat Fraley. Yeah. Pat Fraley is the voice of Krang, and like I put him up there with the likes of Tom Hardy's Bane, which I'm not fishing for prestige here. I'm just equivocating because like it's a very unconventional voice. It's not the kind of thing I expected coming out of a little brain alien.
Yeah.
But it works so well, and look what they did with it afterwards. All these incredible voice actors have carried on the legacy. Brad Garrett was Krang in the Michael Bay movie, and he's just like one of the most identifiable voices in the world. And then in the 2012 TV show, we had the most like top two of the top three most scathing voices in Hollywood, Roseanne Barr and Gilbert Gottfried. And then like the only thing they're missing is Fran friggin' Drescher, right? Could you imagine a Fran Drescher Krang?
I like that next series.
Shredder!
She could probably get the whole like pretty well too.
We'll see some real chaos.
Man, nobody can recreate that well. And like many have tried, many have made noble efforts, and I applaud them. But no one can really get the same effect that Pat Fraley gave with
It's such a unique character voice, and I don't really think of any others that land quite the same way, you know?
It was truly a stroke of genius.
And I feel like props to Fraley too for like he hasn't really reused that voice.
No, he's a pro. He's up there with Frank Welker, man. He's about as versatile as they come. Yeah, even in my notes in front of me, it says no one can replicate. We're gonna go on and on. I think a lot about voice acting in this show because there is just some incredible names attached to it. Not to mention just like the pantheon and fraternity that is like the OG core cast and how important they've been.
And I think we can, I mean, just as a little bit of a time period anchor for everybody listening to this, we're recording this around the time that Shredder's Revenge came out. And the fact that they got the voices back for a lot of the characters really speaks to how iconic they are for this version of the Turtles.
Oh, I just love seeing stuff on social media when the cast reunites, and they do it frequently enough. It's not even like a thing like we haven't seen each other in years. They get together like a couple times a year in different Comic-Cons and stuff. And it's always just this like radically joyous, lovely occasion between them.
So awesome.
I appreciate that. That being said, how did you feel when you learned that Uncle Phil was Shredder?
I mean, I love it. I've always loved it. Like I definitely watched Fresh Prince when it was on the air. I was watching it at the same time that I was watching Ninja Turtles. I don't know if like my child brain would have made the connection until like somebody really spelled it out for me, but it's just kind of awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I was stupid. I just realized a couple of weeks ago that Townsend Coleman was also Rocksteady. But yeah, like learning Uncle Phil was Shredder. I think I was in denial for a couple weeks. I just went, no, he's not. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way Uncle Phil, this big teddy bear sweetheart, is the Shredder. He's a dick, you know? Lo and behold, R.A.P. What a friggin' legend. Like, I think that's the voice of Shredder that most people think of. You know, I really love the Terminator voice from the first movie because I just love everything from the first movie.
Yeah.
But that depiction of Shredder is just, I don't know if perfect is the right word, but iconic definitely is.
I mean, it's pretty close to perfect for this kind of a show.
This show, yes. Is it my favorite version of the Shredder? No. But does he nail exactly what he needed to do? Yeah.
You passed your test with flying colors. Your hairy little friend knows me as Oroku Saki.
Yeah, I mean, this could very easily like turn into exaggeration, but I'd be hard pressed to think of another person who could take a character and voice them in a way that is like goofy and funny, but also still maintain the menace of that character.
Menace. That's the word. Yes. Menace. That's perfect.
I mean, for like this kind of a show, you know, like there's a lot of fantastic voice actors out there. And I mean, well, we could talk about a lot of different people in a lot of the different, like some of our favorite shows, like Batman, the animated series, stuff like that. There are a lot of characters who in like that show, for example, who balance different elements of those characters that they've portrayed over years. But like that show took itself so seriously and was a serious show, admittedly for kids, but still a very serious show. Whereas this is like meant to be goofy. Like they really owned the idea of like Ninja Turtles. That's so wacky. Like, and the show is wacky, but at the same time, Shredder still like week to week was like this scary guy.
Yeah, no, he posed a definite threat. And he was definitely on par with the likes of Skeletor.
Yeah.
And Cobra Commander. Like he matched up with the 80s villains where it's like he could be foiled, but there was a threat there. But yeah, that voice works so well. Just tonight
I dine on turtle soup.
You know, he just devours the scenery with it.
Yeah, and that felt like a real threat too, you know? Like it was a unique threat because it really leaned into the concept. But you know, like it's sort of like a marriage of the script writing and the person saying it. They did a really great job.
Really did. And the marriage between Shredder and Krang becomes so beautiful later on.
Yeah, where it starts to get a little bit more goofy.
What are your feelings on Splinter being active, like in an active, action-packed role? Because in my mind, I'm still like, I'm such a broken record. I equate everything to the first movie where Splinter is a little more old, decrepit. That's such a mean word to use, but it's kind of true. And he doesn't get up and around a bunch. He's just wise. When Splinter starts fighting, like I still have kind of mixed feelings about it in every iteration. And it started all the way back in 87. What do you think?
Well, I think what's funny for me is that like really besides the original comic and the movie, or the movies rather, like most other ones have had him active.
It's true. For some reason, the definitive canon in my head has Splinter being like the man behind the chair.
It's kind of hard, right? Because he is trading his, you know, sons, students, whatever you want to call them, like in the way of ninja. And that's not to say that it's not possible to do it if you're not physically capable of doing it yourself. Like, I think it does mentally make more sense to me that he would at least be active enough that he could physically demonstrate as well as like verbally teach.
Well, in like the 2012 series, he stayed on the back lines until the 11th hour, right? Like my sons are in danger. It's time to get involved. Same thing with
which kind of like the movie,
the Turtles 2 movie, and more than Turtles 1, I would argue, because like he was the victim in that.
Well, but it's still at the end he got involved.
Yeah, I mean, he shows up with the bow and arrow, and I was like, "That's sick," because I shoot bow and arrow. But yeah, as far as like him being on the front lines, I look back at the '87 series. I'm like, wow, that feels weird now.
Yeah, I think the thing that separates it for me is in this one, they make a really big thing about him having the power of rats, and I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
I mean, I was always into it when he did ratty things like fought with his tail or bit or, whatever. That's one of the things I really love from the Michael Bay movies was just like how rat-like he was. Like he really embodied the character, in the '87 cartoon, he's a Yoshi in a rat suit, right? As opposed to like a sentient rat.
Right. So remind me if in the Michael Bay one, is he Hamato Yoshi transformed into a rat again, or is it a rat mutated into a large rat?
It's a large rat.
Okay. I know I talked about this on the last episode. That makes a lot more sense to me.
Me too. I was definitely always down more with I'm seeking revenge for my master than like I'm seeking revenge for myself.
No, but even in the idea of like him having more rat-like qualities, like I buy it a lot more when it is a physical rat that was mutated into a humanoid rat, having those inherent, like, of course he acts like a rat. He was a rat, so he had experience digging and sniffing things out and clawing and all that different stuff. But like when it's a human who got turned into a rat, it's like why would you do those things? Why?
I mean, he's adapted, which is another core moral of the show, of the entire franchise is adapting.
True.
But
yeah, I just the way that they say it is such like an '80s cartoon sort of thing, and they just keep bringing it up. Like in the conversation with Shredder and Krang is like, you thought the mutagen would eliminate Hamato Yoshi, but instead it gave him the power of the rats. And then Splinter like calls it out himself later on when he's going to go dig through the wall, where he's like, us rats could do a lot more than. It's like, what are you talking about? How is this like a superpower?
I think that was just another thing in the writing where they were trying to give a sense of superiority to the villains. Like our heroes are living in the gutter. They don't have money. They're in kind of dingy situations. They're the underdogs, right? And the villains have every ounce of apparent finance in New York at their disposal, as well as alternate dimension funding.
True.
So like they've got all the toys, right? The turtles have sticks. Turtles have sticks and knives. I think that's kind of part of it.
I'll buy that. To me, it was sort of like, they like, oh man, you made a mistake. Now he has the power of the rats, and we have a true challenge on our hands. It's like, what? Like what? He can fit in places. Like what is this supposed to be?
The power of the rats, and then in season 8 they become Rat Power Rangers.
I mean, that almost happened. It has happened in the comics.
It was awesome. All right, so moving on to the creation of Bebop and Rocksteady, a tentpole moment.
Yes.
In the cartoon, and I just want to say right up front, fuck these robots.
Okay, buddy, you're coming with us. Just come along quietly, and you won't get hurt. Have a pleasant stay.
Fuck these robots because of Turtles, the arcade game. They were so hard. I don't know why they took so many goddamn hits.
And I mean,
they are much more tolerable in Shredder's Revenge.
And a great animation too. Like even though they were a pain in the ass, like the way that they electrocuted your character was pretty cool.
I mean, everything about them is cool. They're cool robots, but that's why I hate them, because they're tough robots.
I also love how I get it. It's a kid show. They do this for this, like it's for the reason that it's supposed to be humorous. But I just love that like Shredder took the time to program personalities into these robots. Like they talk to the animals. One of the robots tips his hat to the guy on the bench with the newspaper when they leave. Like,
yeah,
what?
The jokes keep rolling. Like the show if nothing else, it's consistently pretty damn funny. I wanted to ask what your thought process was on the picking of the animals for Bebop and Rocksteady, because clearly they could have gone with anything. Bebop and Rocksteady were created for the show, became canon later on. Like they were they kind of made moves before Harley Quinn did, right? Can I put them in the same caliber?
I mean, yes, right, because they were creations for the cartoon that then got added into the comics later on. But I also wonder, like, so you have a better grip on the original comic than I do. Were they introduced into the Mirage?
No, not at all. There was never. I take that back. In Volume 4, when Kevin Eastman left and Peter Laird took over and things got weird and political, and I kind of loved it. There is a moment where, I don't know, I mean, for those reading IDWs right now, you know how Bruno Island is like an isolated terrarium essentially for the Utroms and how they've come to Earth, and it was supposed to be the 0.0 for them trying to terraform the Earth so that it could become new Utrominum.
Yeah.
But like in Volume 4, the Utroms straight up are just like public knowledge in Turtle World. And like they are ambassadors for alien immigration. And Michelangelo works with them. And I always thought that was such a fascinating dynamic, knowing that the Utroms are not inherently evil in Mirage, like Krang and pretty much every other version of the Utroms to a certain degree have had in their DNA. Utroms are perfectly like peaceful. There's not a bad one in the bunch, right?
Except for
when they're at like, well, except for Krang, but Krang doesn't exist in Mirage at all.
Yeah, it was really this show that made the Utroms be the like one of the bad guys for the Turtles in some way, shape, or form in the future.
Yeah, they made everything a bad guy for the Turtles. Every ally they made in the Mirage comics became a potential villain because they were just all creepy looking. But I might have to backpedal a bit because I think in Volume 4, the point I was getting at that I went off on a weird diatribe about was that you do see like I think there's like a bar scene, and somebody tell me if I'm wrong. There's like a cantina-esque scene in Volume 4, and there's like a warthog and rhino in the background. They don't count. It's just a wink and a nod or something like that. But Peter Laird has been on record saying like he fucking hates Bebop and Rocksteady. He just hates the dumb bumbling aspect of any plot.
That's fair. And I mean, like, obviously they were in the Archie comics, which I read a ton of the Archie TMNT when I was a kid. And I guess that sort of separates them from a character like Harley Quinn, who was in the animated series first, but then introduced into like the canon, modern comic of DC, like mainline comics of DC, versus these two characters that like they were never really in the OG comic line and then would show up through various points.
Right. That's all I'm saying, though, is like they became so beloved in one iteration that they started to span the universe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was a huge problem with Ninja Turtles 2, the movie, right? Like a lot of people, a lot of the fans wanted Bebop and Rocksteady, but like you said, Eastman and Laird were like, they weren't really our creations. We don't really want them for the movie. And they found a compromise by creating Toka and Razor.
Yeah. And since then, both creators have kind of like washed their hands and went, well, whatever. People love it.
Yeah.
I'm on board with that. But I do wonder, like, why a rhino and a warthog? Is it just because they were threatening looking?
Right. Like, you're in the zoo, you could have grabbed literally any other animal. Like, you could have gotten a lion, a tiger.
Exactly. A shark.
Yeah.
Granted, we see all of that sooner or later, but why are Bebop and Rocksteady rhinos and warthogs?
Yeah. Well, it's also really funny where you're like as a kid, I'm looking at the animation right now, and they definitely made that warthog and rhino look like they were nasty.
Right.
But then, like, what's your next pop culture warthog? It's Pumbaa.
Oh my God, you're right.
So you get like super evil, bumbling warthog Bebop, and then you get bumbling but good-natured Pumbaa, and those are like the only two pop culture warthogs I could call.
And then they put the cherry on top by recasting it as Seth Rogen. Full Circle, who's now making the next Ninja Turtle movie, which I'm kind of into.
Oh my God. Makes a cameo as Bebop.
Oh my God. He's still my heart. All right, moving on. The thugs. I don't want to call them Foot Clan because they're not ninjas.
The punks.
The punks, who are basically the Purple Dragons, but they never really call them that.
Yeah.
Movie Clubhouse, way better than TV Clubhouse. Shredder's got him in like a one-way door sealed kind of like prison room.
Yeah.
And there's like 7 guys in there just like chilling out, making food fights. Because that's what bad guys did in the 80s. They didn't do meth. They threw pies.
It's hilarious because like this is a guy who is the leader of a ninja clan who has, I guess at this point, changed all of his ninjas into robots. And yet he still has a use for like these 4 random punks off the street of Manhattan.
Yeah, the logic is not there. Like, why are they working for this seemingly prestigious criminal organization?
And it's such a sweet deal for them too, because like obviously he puts them up. They have a room in the Technodrome.
Right. Like they've got the equivalent of what I can only imagine is a penthouse suite in there that they've trashed, like Motley Crue.
Also, I think I called this out in the first episode. I don't care. I'm going to call him out every time. I love the guy who's like a mix of the guy from the Prodigy and from like a band member of the Flock of Seagulls.
Oh, he turns into a bat.
He is just my favorite.
He's a bat. He becomes a bat mutant later on.
Like a bat or like wingnut bat?
Not wingnut.
Okay.
Not iconic. But like at some point you see the other thugs in mutated forms, and he's a friggin' bat, I think.
I know, I could see that.
He's got the purple and the black coat.
Yeah. The purple hair.
Everybody had purple hair.
And the visor.
Everybody had a visor. Rocksteady's the only one without purple hair and a visor.
And I'm sorry, Bebop is in his human form is not wearing a visor. Those are purple sunglasses.
I mean, kind of a visor. It's like Kanye West glasses or something. I don't know. Maybe more like Star Trek. I don't know. Either way.
Love the coat though.
Yeah.
Huge collar.
I mean, that was mandatory in the 80s. Also, like, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there. The one guy with the yellow mohawk just straight up looks like one of the characters from, do you remember Stone Protectors?
No, I don't.
Stone Protectors was this weird attempt in the early 90s to like piggyback off the turtle fame, but it was troll dolls.
Oh man.
Remember troll dolls with the foofs on top of their head and the gems in their belly? Yeah, apparently someone in the 90s decided that they need to be action heroes. So it's a bunch of like teenage dudes with little gems in their bellies that turn into trollish action stars on rollerblades and in a rock band kind of thing.
Oh my God.
And one of them has that like ex-bolero thing over their chest with the pouches. Like he embodies, like 90s kind of action. Who's the comic book artist who used to do that crap all the time?
Well, with all the pockets?
With all the pockets? Rob Liefeld. He's got a real Rob Liefeld thing going on. I just like everything top to bottom, the glasses, the hair, the bolero, the pants looks like a character from Stone Protectors.
So to me, and this is like a little weird, but he kind of reminds me of like, what if Savage Dragon looked like, what would he look like as a human?
Oh my God. We're connecting so many dots here right now. Volume 3, Image Comics, TMNT, non-canon.
Oh, yeah. That was one of the first issues I owned. I think I mentioned that last time, too.
Wait, which issue was it?
TMNT crossover with Savage Dragon.
Oh, just the straight up crossover. Got it. Okay, because I remember getting a few issues of Image Volume 3. And the first one I picked up was the spoilers. The one where Donnie dies.
Yup.
And I just remembered like getting that comic and like looking at the cover, and it's this shark who is not Armagon, devouring a turtle on the cover. And then you open it up, and about 4 pages in, you see the carcass of Donnie's skeleton and shattered shell on the ground. And I went, well, I don't want to read Turtles anymore.
Yep. Yeah. That was real hard.
That was. Anyways.
Yeah. we'll get to the comic another time.
We're way off.
Shredder in a hazmat suit.
Shredder in a hazmat suit with the mask underneath.
Yep.
Presumably the armor underneath, which defeats the purpose of the hazmat suit because it's all sharp blades, so it's going to poke holes in it. Okay, so my notes are acknowledge sex versus mutation. So, like, that's something I always kind of wondered is the mutation in Turtles, is that body horror?
I mean, it has been in some iterations.
Because in the Michael Bay, when Bebop and Rocksteady come out, the first thing they do is drop a dick joke.
Yep. But even then, there's like a little bit of horror body morphing happening.
Yeah, but also to like, do they have like big hairy warthog dicks?
Oh boy.
This is no longer a family friendly show.
I mean, in the Michael Bay movie, yes, they do.
I don't know. I would be horrified by the thought of like being turned into an animal and having like and the kid in the penis.
Well, just everyone say a prayer for Ace Duck and we'll move on.
Oh, wow. Deep cut. So 10 out of 10 comedic timing, I realized, was the when they breach the surface and pop the manhole cover and just panic.
Now everybody be quiet. We don't want to make a disturbance.
I got a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore, Uncle Toto!
Come on, we gotta get out of here!
Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yep, my notes in all caps are worst ninjas ever.
Yeah. No, they really are. And that theme comes back time and time again.
Like, it's just broad daylight. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Also, like, how weird is New York City in the 80s and 90s that people were like, well, that was weird. Let's go back to my day now.
I mean, that's the best joke from the first movie, was like, looks sort of like a big turtle in a trench coat. You going to LaGuardia, right? And as someone who's lived in New York for 15 plus years, yep. That's exactly right.
The next scene is the April's boss giving her the zoo robbery story and her being like, oh, come on, what? Like, I'm this investigative reporter and you're sending me to a zoo robbery. It just happens to be the same thing, but they don't know that at the time.
Right. Naturally.
Which is like the perfect contrivance of kids' cartoons, where like even the demeaning job that the leading woman doesn't want to do is the job she does want to do.
I mean, okay, so I mean, it's sexist and it didn't age well, but it's also perfect plot progression to have Byrne be a dick.
Yeah, well, I would say that, like, I'm not calling that out because the show didn't do it well. I'm calling it out because that's like a real experience that professional women have. Mm-hmm. And good on a kid show from the 80s to like kind of lean into it and be like, the reason why April is cool hanging out with these 4 mutant turtles is because she is a legitimate reporter who is trying to find the best stories in the city, and her boss is an idiot who is giving her shit because she's a woman. Like, wow. Yeah,
100%. And like, not even in like the Perry White Lois Lane equivalents has that ever been that drastic. You know, Lois Lane always kind of like gets the best of Perry White.
Yeah,
Superman, but April kind of gets kicked around a little bit.
Which, I mean, that's definitely like a product of times, in if you're going to use that kind of a term. But it was also like, you know, as we know, but maybe our audience doesn't, like April was not originally a reporter.
Right.
So it was a way of like trying to, I don't know. It's like, it's interesting how they took this character and they were just like, well, she's not going to be a scientist anymore. She's going to be a reporter, which is just like two completely different occupations.
It's true, but it's so much easier to write getting a reporter into trouble over and over and over again. So I get it, but I definitely like science intern April a lot more. It's such a better, unique spin, and it can work like in the monster of the week scenario, as was proven by 2012 to a certain extent.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I'm 2012. Okay, no, wait, I'm getting a little bit confused. 2012 is the Nick one, right?
That's the CGI one, yeah.
So, I mean, she's a kid.
She's a kid, but she's still like a science kid. She's not straight up like Stockman's intern, appropriately enough, but she's still, I mean, yeah, she is just a kid, but she's like a geek. She's She's Downey's counterpart.
Yeah, I think, again, like, I feel like we're just going to keep coming back to this, but like one of the best things about the Turtles overall is that like they are constantly doing new things. And I think that's why the property has stuck around for as long as it has, because like April's been a scientist, she's been a news reporter, she's been a child, she's been in Rise she's another kid, but like it's a completely different kid than the 2012 version.
Yeah, but looking back on it over the legacy of contributing writers to the Turtles mantra, it's archetypes, right? Like they have nailed the archetypes so well that slight iterations continue to work. You know, we've got the smart one, the goofy one, the serious one, and the angry one. And like angry has taken a lot of different versions over the years, right down to sarcastic in the 87 cartoons. But the archetypes continue to work, right down to April being like the supportive big sister in whatever profession she's in.
It's all about that found family again.
Yep, exactly.
Which I think we would be amiss if we didn't at some point call out. I think a lot of people have familiarity with that crack.com article about, was it a video that was like, which Ninja Turtle are you? The like personality test. And I think the reality of it is that, and what they landed on, whether they realized they were doing it or not, is that it's not which turtle are you. It's that actually you're kind of all of them.
How much of each turtle are you?
Right. And that's what helps you relate to this cast of characters so well, because they, over time, you see them to become more than just a stereotype that they've been given. But even at the beginning, like you can identify with the different turtles at different points of your life, depending on how you're feeling, because every character, Casey, April, Splinter, all of them reflect different parts of us at different times. And it's sort of like a genius way to make a large cast show.
We may be coming to an early revelation here, but honest to God, like it just feels like the longevity of Turtles is just built around characterization. They do such a good job characterizing. Even when things have shifted at its core, the archetypes follow in perfect formation.
Yeah.
So Turtles continues to be appealing because the characters get along so well with each other.
Love it.
So here is your favorite scene, Punk Turtles.
Yo, sister, what's the haps?
Yo, sister, what's the haps?
Give me a break, guys.
Well, we had to disguise ourselves somehow.
Try to get serious.
It's just like, again, like worst ninjas ever. Even when they are trying to blend in, they're just these green dudes in coats, still color coordinated, very important.
No pants.
No pants. And they're just like dancing in the middle of the sidewalk.
In broad daylight.
Outside a news station.
Where there are more cameras attached to that building than anywhere else in the city. Worst ninjas ever.
And like, again, perfect April just being like, oh my God, stop.
Again, the big sister. It's kind of perfect.
I do like Mikey's coat, though. Come on.
Mikey's coat's pretty dope. Yeah, it's pretty hot topic. A little bit of trivia I wanted to bring up is, did you know that Cam Clark and Townsend Coleman originally auditioned for the opposite roles?
I don't think I knew that.
At the very least, I'm 99% sure of this, but at the very least, Townsend Coleman 100% auditioned for Leo.
Huh.
And they gave him Mikey, and then Cam Clark came in and got Leo. I don't know if he auditioned for Mikey. I think he did.
I would have liked to hear those voices.
Me too. Can you imagine an alternate universe where those are flipped? Like, I'm not trying to picture like Leonardo being like, "Yo, dudes," but like just Townsend Coleman's inflection working in Leo lines. I think it would work.
I mean, they're professionals, so it definitely would work.
Yeah.
I also wanted to call out that, like, good on April for that entire scene. Not just for being like, you guys are ridiculous, but also when they just laugh in her face about getting this zoo report to investigate. And she's like, well, there were robots that stole the animals. And they're like, oh, well, in that case, let's go check it out. It's like, no, yeah, listen to her. She knows what she's doing. April is the straight man in this show. Like, she's constantly the voice of reason. Go figure, with a bunch of teenage boys. Right. Yeah, like the dynamic between April and the Turtles in this one works a lot better than the other ones. Not that they're bad, but just giving her that position of authority in the 87 cartoon worked really well. Oh, and here is the iconic scene where the Turtles drop down and land outside the Technodrome. And you got that perfect picture of the scale of it. And Shea Stadium, yeah, I'm pretty accurate. Yeah, well, before that, when Splinter gets caught by the robot, oh my God, that tentacle is so long. Yeah, almost infinite. So the Turtles are trying to break in Technodrome to rescue Splinter. No fall damage. No fall damage, even though they fell like what easily should have been 20 to 30 stories. Yeah, I mean, they fell like the Empire State Building. April using a payphone is always such a generational trip. Yeah, just show this scene to like my daughter. Like, what is that? Just love that they even acknowledge that the old payphones used to have like phone books attached to them. Like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good accuracy world building right there. And then we get the infamous scene where the Turtles finally face off against the robots, which is one of the best scenes in the entire series. Starting off with the Star Wars trash compactor scene, which my notes are shut down all the trash compactors on the detention level. Shut down all the trash compactors on the detention level. Surprised they didn't quote that, actually. Probably too scared. But yeah, perfect opening, and then it just kind of like spirals from there. I really like the iteration of this that was in the audiobooks. Do you remember the audiobooks that came out around the same time? I had some of them for sure. I don't remember what they sounded like, but I had them. I still have the cassette and the original printing of that book, of the that's awesome. Basically the pilot first 4 episodes of Turtles, from Turtle Tracks all the way up through facing off with Krang when he becomes giant. It's in a unique visual style, but the writing is basically Archie Comics. But yeah, there was a read along, like audiobook cassette tape that I had with it, where the voices were drastically different. And Krang basically sounds like Darth Vader.
Saki, this is Krang. Report to me at once.
And I really love that iteration of this scene because they use great sound design to kind of like bring this scene back to life. And it's such a visual scene in my head. Like, I can almost recall it beat to beat, 40 years away.
A steel sawing machine flung a saw blade straight at Leonardo, narrowly missing him.
Yikes!
A giant mechanical claw reached out to grab Michelangelo.
Rude, dude.
Another robot fired lasers at Donatello, who jumped up to avoid them. Donatello smashed his wooden staff onto the robot's head.
Even lasers are no match for a nice strong stick, huh?
Michelangelo furiously fought off the robot with the mechanical claw-like arms.
And they did such a good job of that in the audiobook, but that's, I digress.
That is awesome.
The scene is friggin' dope, but if you look close, there's another animation error when the trash compactor thing is going on. Michelangelo has 3 toes. Just putting it out there.
I think I remember if I remember correctly, there's a bit in the book they put out a bunch of years ago, like the was it the encyclopedia or whatever, where there was like a conversation on whether on how many toes they should have.
So where do you stand on this? I always thought this was a really interesting conversation because the turtles have 2 toes in a lot of iterations because they look like the kind of footwear a ninja would have. That kind of, I'm not cultured enough to know what they're called, but it's a type of footwear that is prominent in Japan that splits right down the middle kind of thing. It's a sandal kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in real life, as someone who has owned a turtle as a pet, they have 3 toes. Where do you stand on this?
I do not care. I feel, I have a lot of opinions on the Ninja Turtles, but this is just one of the ones where it's just like, and I don't care. As long as they're consistent in the animation, it looks good.
I think it's important they have 3 fingers on their hands.
Yeah, I think that's like pretty concrete.
Yeah, but as far as the feet go, don't care that much. As far as the pads go, don't care that much. I prefer the brown pads or something that looks a little more realistic, I guess, rather than fully colored.
Well, it is like really funny that they all wake up every day and be like, well, time to put on my orange elbow pads.
Yeah. But yeah, I kind of wondered where you stood on that because I know that was a point of controversy when the 2012s came out. It's like, but that's what turtles have.
Yeah. I remember that being like a thing, and it was just like, oh my God, what what are we doing here?
It works perfectly well both ways. That's my argument.
Yeah, again, as long as it's consistent in the particular iteration, that's all I would care about. Like, if they were like, well, Raph is going to have 3, but Mikey's going to have 2, I'd be like, what? What are you doing?
I mean, if they could justify that with the breed of turtle that they are, like they did in the Rise, how they're all different species. But, like, I don't think that happens in turtle genomes.
Yeah.
It's still roughly the same. But I do love the robot designs. I love the suspense in this scene. I love the action.
I think this is hilarious because it kind of like it points you in the direction of where the first season of the show is going to be with all of the random like Rube Goldberg traps that wind up happening at different points. It's like imagine the idea of Krang and Shredder sitting down to do the Technodrome, or I guess it's like Krang as he brings it in and he allows Shredder to be in it, but still like Shredder moves into the Technodrome and he's like, okay, here's going to be our main bridge. Here's the teleporter room. If we ever get the Dimension X thing working again, here's the apartment for the punks that I have live with us for some reason. And then here's the random robot room. What do you mean the random robot room? Well, this is just going to be a room where I take random things and I make robots out of them for no discernible purpose.
It's like the Property Brothers are having a fit designing the Technodrome.
Like either this was like a randomly generated dungeon that Shredder put together explicitly because he knew the turtles were going to come here, besides the fact that he desperately did not want them to find out about it just an episode ago. Or he and Krang are just really weird tinkerers, like avant-garde robot makers. And this is what they came up with.
Either of those is plausible. I don't know. I feel like a good villain needs to have a trap room.
But isn't even a trap room? They just walked into a door.
Fair. I mean, maybe Shredder just has a weird video game fetish. He's like, gotta build everything up long term like that.
And my real question are like, were any of these toys? Because they really should have been.
No, that's the thing. Like all the big robot villains should have been toys. They should have been a playset.
Like there's one here that just throws saw blades.
Yep.
And then the one with the giant arm. like, I'm just looking at all of them. And there's no rhyme or reason for, like, it's not like they're based off animals or anything. Like, there's one that's just a piston.
Yeah, just slams down. It's not Dr. Robotnik, man.
And I also wrote down a note that I love that, like, Mikey has super strength or something because he's just chucking through metal.
Yeah, like this whole scene, like Donatello punching his bow staff through the lens, like the animation is so good.
It's perfect.
There's some really great almost 3D effects going on and some of the animation that they're working on in the scene. And yeah, Mikey's berserker rage.
I forgot about the Manta Ray one, the one that's just like flying.
Yeah, these are like the most absurd designs, and like they got to be terrible if a nunchuck can slice an arm off something.
They're just made with foil.
That, and it's just like ripe with catchphrases.
I forgot about the one that like has tentacles that crawls up to them and then just pulls out a machine gun.
What's that? Oh my God, you're right. Yep.
It's like the weird pyramid one. It's like, oh, I'm going to chase after Mikey. And he's like, I got you cornered. He just pulls out a machine gun from its roof.
These robots are These are brilliant.
This way!
Like Shredder is a maniacal genius. I'm assuming he designed these.
It's got to be, right? I mean, like, so much of it, like the Temple of Doom style next room where there's just a pillar of spikes chasing them.
Yeah, they just made a bulleted list of like a dozen action scene tropes from Hollywood history and just went all in here. Yeah, running down that hallway with the giant like cylinder thing.
And then still after all of that, like you get another kind of iconic entrance of the Shredder.
I must congratulate you.
It's the same guys we fought last night.
You passed your test with flying colors.
Test? What test?
But you may call me the Shredder.
Like all of that, like it's cool, don't get me wrong. And as a kid, I was probably like, whoa, robots. But like all of that was inherently silly. And then you get this like entrance with the foot soldiers coming through the door and it opening up to reveal the Shredder. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
It was pretty dope.
You saved the best door for yourself.
I mean, he's a walking egomaniac.
You passed your test with flying colors.
Meanwhile, we got Splinter, Admiral Akbar up there. Like, why didn't you say something? He didn't gag you. You just look like scared. Warn
like,
your sons that this is a trap. Clearly.
Just gonna hang here. You're on your own, guys. And then we get the big reveal that like, oh, I did this.
Yeah, what a weird place for that, really, in retrospect.
Because it was I who made you what you are today. If not for me, Hamato Yoshi would never have left Japan. I followed him to this country where I gained my advanced technology, including my rare experimental mutagen. It was
everything about it, where I gained my rare mutagen. Like, what?
And just like in the middle of a tense fight, this is not the time for exposition. Shredder.
It is just really funny too. Like, again, there's this, like, I know, and they've said it before, that Shredder gets all of his technology from Krang. I get it. But like in his explanations to the Turtles, he's like, I came to America and that's where I found my experimental mutagen. Like, why does the US have that? Where did that come from?
That's a question I wanted to ask is like, what is the long-term plan of mutagen? Like, is this just a byproduct or is he trying to manufacture an army? They never establish it.
Right. And like, did he make it? Did he just acquire it? Is it something that he found? Like, it's just like it's just a thing he has. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, I mean, that's the plot of so many like 80s cartoons. Like, don't worry about it. But another solid fight, some good choreography, good camera angles.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it's one of those things where like, hey, the turtles leave, like they get out.
How? We don't know or care.
No, but like just the idea that this is like a superhero cartoon essentially, and they retreat to fight another day. They're like, well, we saved our master. Let's get out of here. We're not going to stick around and fight this guy anymore.
Yep.
Maintains the menace of Shredder. Like even he ostensibly just lost, and you're like, oh man, they're scared of him.
Yeah. Let me just say, I miss Rocksteady's helmet. I really wish that stayed with the character. They dropped it so early. I thought it looked so much cooler with like the flight helmet and goggles thing, or like the military helmet goggles thing going on.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed.
Whoa, was that another animation thing?
It's not in continuity. It's a character design choice. Like when he shows up, he's all decked out like he's like some weird Republican or something. And he's got the helmet on and the guns, and he's very military. And he keeps the camel pants and like the tank top, but he drops the helmet.
When Bebop's rifle gets cut, it is Leonardo jumping at him with a sword, but then the masks and all the pads are red while he's holding the sword to cut it off.
Well, that was just a little Mirage Easter egg.
I guess so, yeah. It's just funny. I noticed it because this scene is so funny. Leo jumps in, his mask changes colors. Raph flies in after with a drop kick to Bebop, and then barrel rolls over to Rocksteady to stab his rifle. The pace of this show is just like, it's so fast.
Yeah, they waste no time. I have a note here that says underappreciated sound design. I think between some of the most iconic sounds of like the laser blasters and like the sword chops and stuff.
Yeah.
Such great sound in this show that I think continuously goes underappreciated because the animation is so stylistic and iconic, and we know all how much it looks like, but should really like take a second and think about how important it sounds too, from the theme song to the voices to like straight up the Foley. I don't know if you know this or not, but in the 2012 version of Turtles, the CG Nickelodeon show, a classmate of ours got, I honestly don't know which awards, but it was award nominated work on the sound design on that show, and it is impeccable too.
Oh, that's awesome. I did not know that.
Jesse Drake, who we used to work with at the campus radio station, she did sound design on Turtles, and I think she worked on Rise, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, like mega props. Like that's so friggin' cool.
I have to call out 2 last things from the show that I just love about like the character of the show as a whole. First off, they trap Bebop and Rocksteady in the zoo cage, sort of bringing their episode arc full circle. And after they trap them, they just skank around the cage to come into frame.
Yeah,
you do this little 2-step dance. Still, you're like, we got you. And the second thing is, there's like in just these 2 episodes, there are all of these like admittedly kind of creative insults and jokes, and then the episode ends with Mikey saying, "Dumb, dumb, dumb." Those 2 are so dumb. Those dudes are so dumb. Like that's the best you could come up with.
They ran out of writing steam.
Like you made a Jungle Book reference a minute ago.
So our big takeaway from this episode, what do we think the theme was?
Oh man, I didn't really identify a theme so much as it was just like payoff, you know? It was episode 1 was a lot of setup, a lot of like the background, and then this episode is the one where they're like, all right, cool, now you're gonna get like the Death Trap gauntlet fight and rescuing Splinter, which actually pretty cool that after the first episode where April was the damsel in distress, now it was Splinter and April directly led to his rescue, which cool.
Yeah, and I think that is my big takeaway from this is, like you said, but it's a continuation of the first episode and the concept of family. And this is a brand new family, at least with April involved, and they still rallied together with little to no real motivation. Like April doesn't yes, they saved her life, but I feel like that's paid back off, but she stuck with them.
Yeah.
So in my mind, this is additional payoff to like love your family. You know, your dad's in trouble.
Yeah, well, she's like literally only known them a day.
Yeah.
And she's out there being like part of
sticking her neck out.
Yeah, well, part of it is that like she has the like the job reason. She's like, I need to get a story out of this, otherwise all of this weirdness isn't going to be worth it. I'm like, okay, I get that. Like there has to be a reason why this random person is sticking around. But by the end of it, to also be like, yeah, well, I mean, actually, I guess they don't even know that's it. Do they know that Splinter's being kidnapped? They just know that he like went ahead of them.
Yeah, they just know that he's gone. They don't know that Shredder has him. They assume Shredder has him, and rightly so.
So yeah, I don't know if like April has quite found her place in there. Like, oh, these are my friends yet. I think she's mostly still operating from this is my job and I'm going to try and break a big story. And then, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But like, even in the first episode, she's like, I can't wait to break this news. And they're like, you cannot do that. They like people will come after us.
Yeah.
And so there is like a respect that, I mean, we'll see in future episodes builds up where she like hides them and doesn't report on them to protect them and I think that's where like the family aspect really starts to settle in.
Yeah. Yeah. They come out the gate strong with that, honestly. And they stick with it through the entire series. And it's one of the most endearing things about the entire franchise, period.
Yeah. I mean, think about how much of a connection you have to have with somebody right away to be in a job where it is your job to report the weird and possibly dangerous, for all you know, happenings in your city. And you instead decide to be like, you know what, I'm not gonna report this. I'm going to protect you. And I mean, that says something for the immediate relationship that the Turtles and April build.
Yeah. Yeah. And they could totally have, you know, like they could have gone into drama about her losing her job kind of stuff. That feels like something that would happen more in an iteration nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, she totally sticks her neck out for him. It's mutual.
Of course, also, like, if New York City really wanted to learn anything about the Turtles, they could just look out their window because they're absolutely awful ninjas.
Yeah, just rolling around in leather jackets and dancing on the street in broad daylight. So yeah, another good takeaway. The show continues to hold its own, even 30 plus years down the line. Still extremely watchable, still extremely enjoyable, arguably a little more detailed than we were even familiar with.
Yeah. So do we want to introduce our rating?
Our rating.
We did do this for the first episode, but we talked about giving a rating for each episode and going with Chevy Nova being the worst, Bossa Nova being the next step up, Eclectic being the next, Excellent being the best, and then Cowabunga being the really special best.
Oh, that's right. We did talk about this. So I am all in on the Cowabunga camp on this episode.
So for both of them, I think they're really good. This is a really good introduction to the property. And I'm actually like kind of surprised at how well it holds up. Oh, like, you know, what is it? 25, 30 years?
30 years, yeah.
Oh my God. So you know what? Yeah, let's start off strong. I think you kind of have to look at the first two episodes as a whole anyway. So I'm gonna give it a big Cowabunga. Big high five on the roof.
I'm thinking that we're going to get the end of the first 4 episodes of this season 1 and call it a Cowabunga, but that's just me. Like, the first season is so good. It's different than the source material, but it's so well thought out that it works in its own multiversal kind of concept.
Yeah, I mean, I know like we're going to wind up saying a lot of this through this series especially, but because it was the first animated version of it, but like they really did do a good job in these first episodes of taking what they could from ostensibly adult comic and turning it into a version that would be fun for kids.
I mean, even beyond the concept of making it kid friendly, it's still family friendly too. Like I want to emphasize that. I feel like this is storytelling that appeals to a broader audience than just kids.
Yeah.
Like I'm still enjoying watching this now. And yes, I'm biased, but I'm trying to look at this critically, objectively, and it's still a well-made cartoon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even just to take like, the first issue is spoilers for a 35-year-old comic, everybody, but the four turtles are raised by Splinter to kill the Shredder, and they do.
Yep.
In the first issue.
One and done.
So to like take a comic that is a revenge comic and turn it into something that is still, by all intents and means, like using the same concepts. Like, yep, we're Ninja Turtles, they're mutated. The Splinter Splinter's a rat, and they know ninjutsu, and there's this personal conflict with this other guy named the Shredder. Like they took all the parts and just rearranged it in a way that would work for a family friendly avenue. Like whether you want to say kid friendly or family friendly, they did it. They really did it. And it's no surprise that based off of that like Turtle Mania was a thing. Like if this was a crap product, it wouldn't have been as successful as it was.
Right. And honest, like,
I mean, like, I think that's important to emphasize that, like, just because it was a marketing ploy doesn't mean that it couldn't also be good.
There it is. Right there. Yeah, 100%. This show works on a really solid basis. I think we're going to continually come back and reiterate how impressed we still are, at least for a while. Like I know that the show takes a nosedive. I remember it taking a nosedive.
Yeah.
But for the time being, like, yeah, they took something that was completely different and inappropriate for what they were trying to achieve, and they somehow made it work, while keeping the same principles true to form.
Yeah, I think, like you were saying, like later on, we'll see where the quality starts to dip. And I think we'll get some interesting conversations out of that in terms of like, why do you think, I don't want to say like, why did you? Because it is hard to remember like when you're a kid, but like, why do you think you stopped watching the original cartoon when you did?
Oh, that's going to be a hard question.
Yeah, I think it will be, because it's going to have a lot of different factors, surprisingly, for the fact that we were like children when we did it. But considering like, I want to say I was 3 when I started watching Ninja Turtles, three or 4, because the movie came out in 1990. By the time you stopped watching it, it was probably like 7, 8, something like that,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So interesting to think about, like, when we get there, does the quality in the show dip at the same time that you think like, oh man, this is probably around the time I stopped watching? Or was it like, you know what, I just got old?
Yeah, did I lose interest?
Right. And it wasn't until the 2003 cartoon came back that you were like, oh, I'm into this again, because I feel like the animated series going from the original one to the 2003 to the 2012 kind of aged with us.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Like obviously they were still meant for kids at the end of the day, especially when you consider like the 2012 one. But like I watched that entire series from start to finish. I wrote reviews for it professionally, and it was enjoyable pretty much every week.
Yeah, it was a great show. I agree with what you said about 2003 roping you back in, because at that point I had read all of Image and gotten really into the original lore. So having it brought to screen was a huge payoff for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, 87 is really its own little beast, because it has nothing to do with anything. Like it is more of a time capsule than any of the rest of the Turtles, I feel.
Except for maybe the Michael Bay ones.
Yeah, just because they're poorly written.
But I mean, I think you could tell from both of those movies that there was a sincere desire by the people who made it to harken back to that cartoon.
Definitely. Oh, without a doubt, the Michael Bay cartoons, I don't think it's even a secret that they're trying to be the movie versions of the 87 series, but they suck at it. They're not the worst movies ever made, but like,
There's an April Fool's episode where we watched the first Michael Bay.
I mean, I don't prefer them. I know people that do, and I don't want to shame on anybody for being a fan of Turtles, period. But they're not for me. I'm too old, you know? Like I will always love the 87 and the 20 or 2K3 versions. And I have a great appreciation for 2012, even though I'll acknowledge I'm a little old for a lot of the comedy in that. So, you know, the Michael Bay movies, there were still people involved in making them that had the heart of Turtle Mania. But in general, it's just like, I don't want big doofy mean turtles. I want little goofy kind of weird turtles.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I am not a fan of the animation, since we're going to talk about this right now. Not a fan of the animation. I don't like the turtles being huge.
No.
I don't like them being like superheroes in the sense of like indestructible shells and all that other crazy stuff that was in the first movie. But I didn't
mind the shells being like bulletproof because like that was a neat factor, but like them top to bottom being bulletproof was lame.
Right. But I think that they heard a lot of the feedback that happened from the first one, and they made some really good pivots in Out of the Shadows. I think Out of the Shadows is a considerably better movie. It's still not my favorite, but it's far more enjoyable. And I will say that the one thing that is disappointing to hear about, which again, like when we get to these movies in the future, we talk about them more in depth. Apparently they were really, really troubled behind the scenes, and the actors who played the turtles, like who voiced them, because obviously they were CGI, were mistreated very badly. And that is such a shame to hear because of the love and the community that the rest of the Turtle franchise is about and experiences. It really, it kind of hurts me to hear that the people who played the turtles in the turtle movies were not treated as well as they should have been by the production company that was making it. So that sucks.
That really is disheartening and honestly shocking, considering like the hardships that they went through in the first turtle movie and the rubber suits.
Yeah.
And how it was acknowledged, but it's just like, we don't have a better solution kind of thing.
Yeah.
So for them to get that in a movie that seemingly had an endless budget, and something I'll defend in the Michael Bay movies over and over again is the casting. Like beyond Megan Fox, because I don't want to get into that. But like all the dudes cast of turtles were like big turtle fans growing up, and it was like a dream come true for them. And they did a great job. And even Tony Shalhoub, like I know some people didn't like Tony Shalhoub with Splinter, and I went, why? But like the casting was good.
Yeah. If there was an interview that I watched with Alan Ritchson, who played Raphael, and he goes into a lot of the background of like what they were experiencing and how like apparently at one point they were literally left on set. Like the production company had taken everybody back home or to the hotel that they were staying in after filming, except for the four turtles who were just left on the side of the road for like an hour or 2 hours or something like that. So
that's
like,
so heartbreaking. What the hell?
Yeah. Like what the hell? Like whoever's doing, I know there's like 2 future productions right now. Like Netflix is doing one. I guess that one's already done, but then there's the one that you said Seth Rogen's doing, right?
Yeah, the animated one.
Like treat your cast better, treat your crew better. Like
yeah,
this is a community that will pour their heart and soul into what you were doing. Treat your cast and crew accordingly, like please, because they deserve it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's definitely one thing I love being a turtle fan. As someone who is also Star Wars fan, Star Trek fan, Lord of the Rings fan, those audiences can be very polarizing.
Oh yeah.
Very controversial. But most of the people I've met in the turtle community are like, well, yeah, you know, Next Mutation wasn't great, but like I watched it. It was all right. we're all kind of on board, is what I'm saying.
I mean, again, like, I think that it is weird to see how, like, the Turtle franchise as a whole has evolved and really embraced the changes, like some big, some minor, but things have continuously changed in every iteration. And it is, I'm sure there are people out there who are, you know, like the horrible people who say horrible things online and all that kind of crazy stuff. But like, it is significantly less pronounced than some of the other communities that we partake in and hear about. And let's keep it up, Turtle fans. Like, let's.
Sure, there's definitely parts that are going to be subjective, and you're going to like things more than others, and etc. You know, I'll be very vocal when there's moments in Turtledom that I don't like, and I know you do the same.
Yeah,
and we all do the same. But like I said, in general, the multiverse of Turtledom has been pretty friggin' great, start to finish, with very little true failures. I don't know if I even feel comfortable using the word failure, because even the worst parts of Turtles, I'm like, well, yeah, it was all right.
But even
Turtles as an analogy are the same analogy I give to pizza. Even the worst pizza, pretty good.
Unless it's like some of the franchise pizza.
I don't know, man. Like, are you talking about like sardines and marshmallows? Because I don't really want to eat that.
No, this is related, right? Because we're talking pizza, we're talking Ninja Turtles. I saw a meme the other day that was Little Caesars. It's hot and it's ready. Like, and someone goes, "Is it good?" It's good? Hot and it's ready.
And it's ready.
We're like, in a pinch, will I eat Little Caesars? Yeah, I've done it. Am I happy about it? No, not really.
Listen, I know, like you did, we all did. We grew up eating like ketchup on bread pizza in middle school.
Yes.
And I was just like, yeah, I'll still eat that.
I love pizza day, the best day of the week.
That's my point. That's all I'm saying. With that being said, let's bring this episode to a close.
All right.
Another great episode in the 87 Pantheon. We'll be back next week with
A Thing About Rats.
And we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.
Duderonomy is produced by Brian Van Gelder and me, Dan Spitaleri. Brian edits and mixes the show and also designed our show art. Our theme music is composed by Mario Sello Nuñez. You can hear more of his music on Spotify, which we've linked to in the show notes. Find us on Twitter at Duderonomy_TMNT and send email to deuteronomy.tmnt@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Cowabunga!